Hi BookTube, and welcome to a brief video. This is going to be a sort of whistle-stop bookshelf tour because my book storage system has changed for the first time in 20-30 years. In that, as some of you know who follow my channel, I had a disaster of a mould infestation in the outhouse where I store my books, and yesterday I donned one of these for the first time in my life ever and attacked that mould, but in doing so I had to throw out 2 bookshelves which had got sort of infested with fungus and had been the cause of the outbreak, and I had to dump another 100 books. That's probably 200 to 300 books I've had to throw away for being completely unsalvageable from mould. So yesterday I did the anti-mould treatment. Today I've been painting with anti-mould paint. Bit of paint speckle there. I've only done 1 coat. I've got to do another one in a couple of hours. In saying I've done 1 coat, when I reported to my wife that I'd finished, I reported it as a first draft, not a first coat. That's how much of a writer I am, and that's also how much of a non-DIY person I am. Anyway, so that's the sort of the background of the disaster, and I'm going to take you on a whistle-stop tour of part of the solution. I do still have 1 bookshelf and some smaller units in that outhouse because I can't bring everything inside the house. The reason they were stored out there in the first place is because our house just isn't big enough for bookshelves. But this is what I have done. Look. Bookshelves inside the house for the first time ever, and I'm going to give you a brief whistle-stop tour. So every book in these bookshelves I have read, so these are the ones I've wanted to keep. You'll also see that I'm missing a shelf there and a shelf there. The stupid suppliers only sent me 2 adjustable shelves, and I need 3 and paid for 3 as it happens, and they're sending them. But rather than wait till that arrives, I thought quick whistle-stop tour. So this shelf is my modern women's writers, and the other shelf there is going to be part 2 of that. A lot of those books down there are just awaiting to be shelved, starting with Vernon Subutex 1 by Virginie Despentes. Okay, so this shelf, the next one down, is my European writers. Probably one of my fonder shelves. Lots of Michel Houellebecq there. Don't hate me for it. I love the guy as a writer, not as a human being. Ugresic, Erpenbeck. Of course, there's the good thing of, well, why are Ugresic and Erpenbeck in the European rather than the women? And it's mainly an ergonomic space thing, not an ideological thing. Next shelf down is British writers, my favourite British writer, contemporary writers I should say. So you've got Tom McCarthy, Neil Bartlett, Michel Faber, David Peace. And then finally down here is my sort of world shelf. So Murakami, Martel from Canada, Grossman, Yuri Herrera from Mexico. Zone Matisse now probably shouldn't be there because he's European, but again, what the hell. Madeleine Tien, etc, etc. And onto this one, again, missing shelf there. Not sure what's going to be there, whether it's going to be my sort of selected non-fiction, or whether it's going to be my limited sci-fi, which isn't enough to fill a shelf on its own, so I'm not sure. To be decided. Okay, so here we have my slightly lesser favourite British authors. I hope none of them are tuned in and taking exception to that. So we've got David Mitchell, who's only a lesser author because he's so hit or miss. Some of those books are great, some of them are not very good at all. Rana Dasgupta, Chris Cleave, etc, etc, Jonathan Meades. Next one down, US, slightly postmodern, some of these. Denny Ilusky, Joshua Cohen, Jonathan Lethem, quite extensive collection. I'm currently reading another one which will go on that shelf when I've finished. These are definitely postmodern, sort of David Markson, Ronald Sukanik, Blake Butler and Ben Marcus. So I can't say they're universally my favourite American authors because some of the ones down here on the next shelf down are as well. So you've got Eugenides, Eggers, Jarrett Kobeck, and an extensive Don DeLillo collection. And finally, on the bottom shelf, other American authors, including George Sanders, Anthony Mara, Paul Beatty, Ben Lerner, Percival Everett, and Saffron Fur. Okay, so those are the 2 new bookshelves. Now, I've always had this unit. It was above on my old desk, which is always rather sort of flimsy. And this one, as you can see, which I put together myself, hence it's very flimsy. I don't trust to bear the weight of this, so this is now a standalone. So the books on top here are all my son's books, a lot on sport, coaching, sports psychology. He may well end up doing something in that field. Because I share this study with my son. When his twin brother is in residence, he comes in here to escape. When his twin is back at university, then I get to use this room. Here is sort of putatively some of my non-fiction that I make reference to, not to the Beastie Boys, but I don't make reference to that particularly. It's just too big and too beautiful to go anywhere else. But a lot of these, like Reality Hunger by David Shields, Male Fantasies and Jung Reich and The Body, you know, I constantly refer to them in my writing, so they're sort of handy, and they've always been there. But what we have here, excuse me while I get my painting gear out of the way. So under here, and I don't know how good the light is and whether you can see it, this is my to be read pile. Rather extensive. I mean, look at the chunkers there. The Nabokov, the Gaddis, the Pelikanos, and the John Barth. Now, I have read this Ted Morgan book. It was one of the ones I replaced that I'd thrown out with mildew and mould, and I just replaced it because I wanted a copy of it. And I don't really have a biography section because I have very few biographies, so I'm not sure where that's going to live ultimately. But these are, so Kent Haruf, which I will definitely be reading for Jason Old Blues Chapter and Verse course on death and the modern imagination. I think unfortunately that Kent Haruf book is the last month in December, so if I'm going to read it sort of in parallel with everybody else, I guess that's when I'll read it. But if I fancy it, I might read it before then. Mr. Me by Andrew Crumey. I read Crumey for the first time this year and really liked it. William Faulkner, Absalom. I have to say a lot of these books are not high up in my TBR. My immediate TBR is in my bedside cabinet. But there are 1 or 2 here that I will be getting to this year. There's 2 Sabord books down there. I will definitely be reading them. Also Counter Narratives by John Keane on Fitzcarraldo. That book The Ghost Factory by Jenny McCartney, which is set in Northern Ireland, I think is going to be my next read. There's also a sci-fi book there by Tammy O called Do You Dream of Terror 2? Be reading that this year sometime. Middle Sea by William Gass, I'll definitely be reading that this year. But a lot of these, as I say, like Stoner, the Alan Hollinghurst Falling Star, I'm not sure I'm going to get to them this year. They've been in my TBR pile for quite a long time. Some of these books are second, like Mr. Me and Their Finest by Lissa Evans. I won't read them this year because I've read a book by them this year, and I tend not to read books by authors in the same year unless they really grab me. Fernando Pessoa, The Book of Disquiet, is a buddy read to come sometime this year with Celia and Elizabeth at Bookish North. Georges Perec, Life User's Manual, I bought last week. Been meaning to read it for ages. Not sure when I'm going to get to it though. So there you have it. This is my much more sort of cosy, warm, fuzzy feeling, having books around me for the first time in 30 years, so I'm rather pleased about that. Yeah, so there you go. Till next time, thanks very much.